Hi, in this series of tutorial, I'm going to explain the OData operations for performing the CRUD operation from SAP UI5. So for this, I'm not going to consume a gateway services here, but instead I'm going to make use of the reference OData services, and I'm going to construct an application which performs the CRUD operation, which is create, read, update, and delete. So in this series of tutorials, I will be taking one step at a time, and I will be performing one operation in each and every tutorial. So whatever the operation that we are going to do here, it's exactly going to be similar while you're going to consume gateway services as well. The only differences would be that here I do not have some how to validate any tokens, but whereas when you're going to consume gateway services from SAP NetWeaver Gateway, there you need to pass something called as an XCSR of token to the request header, and this is required only when you're going to perform data modification operations such as create, update, or delete. So in other cases, when you're going to read the information, we don't need any CSR of token. So the read operation is going to be exactly similar here and there, and only when we are going to do the post operation, we are supposed to add one more request header called as XCSR of token. So I will be explaining you where you need to add the token while performing the post operation. And in this session, I'm going to perform the get operation, which is I'm going to read the information from the database and I'm going to display it on the user interface. So for that, I'm just going to make use of the reference service. So you can go to the vodata.org website, in which in the developer section you will see the reference services. So when you go there, you will see the references services listed out in different versions of OData. So at the moment in SAP, we only support OData version 2, and OData version 3 is also supported. So OData version 4 is still in development mode. So I will take a reference service from OData. So you can see that three reference services has been listed over here, in which I'm going to make use of this service because this service is the only one service that supports the read operation as well as the write operation, whereas other two services it support only the read operation. So to just quickly get into the service, you can just click on this link, and this is going to take you to the service URL. So here you have the service URL, and in a similar way for a gateway system, when you construct a service, you will have a service URL. So when you're going to paste the service URL in the browser, it is going to list you out the different entity sets that are available as a part of this service. So here you can see that the different entity sets that are available are, you have this product entity sets, and you have this product details, categories, suppliers, persons, person details, and advertisement, and so on. So here there are, we have some reference entity sets. Just to see the metadata definition of this service, you just have to append a parameter dollar metadata along with the service URL. So this is going to tell you what is the name of the entity type, and what is the key fields, and what are the properties for this entity set, and what is this association relationship with the other entity sets. So you can see the metadata information over here by specifying dollar metadata along with the URL. So now if I wanted to see the details that are being exposed as a part of this entity sets, then I just have to append the entity set along with the URL. So slash, I'm appending the entity set URL along with the URL, and this is giving me the data in the format of XML. So now this service, it is capable of returning the data in the format of XML, as well as it is capable of returning the data in the format of a JSON. So for this sake, what I'm going to do is to request the data in the format of JSON. I'm just going to append the parameter dollar question mark dollar format is equal to JSON. So this is going to return the information in the form of JSON. So if you have installed any API clients, REST API clients such as advanced REST API, then you can just paste this URL there and you can view this. So I'm just going to go to the system and I'm going to construct an application which will consume this service. So right click, new project, and in SAP UI5 application development folder choose application project and click on next. So I'm just giving this project name as product management, and I'm choosing this mobile library, and I'm creating the application with initial view, and I'm just naming the view name as products, and this time I'm going to choose XML mode of development, which is the preferred mode for developing your UIs, and I click on finish. So now this is going to develop me an application with a index file, controller file, and a XML file. So here I'm just going to construct my layout. So the first thing that I'm going to do as a part of this series of tutorial is I'm going to display this information in the form of a table UI. So, so I'm just going to give the title as product management, and inside the content region I'm just going to construct the table UI. So table is a part of sap.yum library, and the table extension goes as sap.yum.table. So I have also opened up the API reference for sap.yum.table. So you can see that sap.yum.table has this aggregation columns, which is going to define the list of columns that we can have for the table, and this has been inherited from the list base, which means whatever the property that are available for the list base is available to be used in the table control as well. So if I have also opened the list base in a different window, and here you can see some of the text for the some of the properties that we can use for our table. So first I'm just going to go ahead and construct the table UI, and for the table UI, and for the table UI I'm just specifying the ID as ID product table, and I'm specifying some other properties, like for the table I wanted to specify this item aggregation, that is where which aggregate I have to refer. So I'm just specifying the items, and I just leave it to blank for now. And inside the table I'm going to construct a toolbar. So for toolbar you can see that we have this element header toolbar aggregation in the list, so which is also available for the table as well. So to create a toolbar I'm going to use this header toolbar, and this header toolbar, it supports the type sap.yum.toolbar, which you can see has the content region which supports any type of control. So within the toolbar I can create any type of control. So since the header toolbar supports only toolbar element, I am placing a toolbar element, and inside the toolbar content I'm just going to create my button control. So for that I'm just creating a button with, sorry, three, so I'm just going to create the four different operations: create, select, update, and delete. And for this I'm specifying the icon as sap hyphen icon colon create sap hyphen icon colon filter sap hyphen icon colon edit and sap hyphen icon colon delete. So I have just created the toolbar now, and after the toolbar I'm going to create the columns aggregation. So for the table here in the columns aggregation, we have to specify the list of columns that are there. So you can see that the aggregation name starts with columns in a small c. So columns for table, and in the columns aggregation I'm going to create the list of columns. So this column aggregation, you can see that it's of type sap.m.column, and I'm just going to create a column inside which I'm going to place the text is equal to, let's say, one column, two column, and three columns. So I'm just going to display three columns over here, and in those three columns I'm just going to pass the informations of, say, ID, name, and description. So ID, name, and description. So I just specified the list of columns along with the header. Now I have to specify the cells corresponding to the columns. Now if you see the table control, it's also inheriting from your list base control, which means that in the list when you are creating it, you're going to specify a standard list item which is like a template for each and every row of list that is going to be displayed. So in a similar way, we have to create a template element over here as well, so that that template will be applied for each and every row of your table control. So to apply that template, if you see here in the list, you have this, sorry, you have this aggregation called items, within which we will be specifying the template. So template for table. So here I'm just going to use this items aggregation, and within which I'm going to specify my cells. So here typically in a list we will be using something like standard list item, object list item, or custom list item. Likewise, for table control we have something called as a column list item. So column list item, which has an aggregation called cells. So inside the cells you are going to specify the cell for each and every column, that is the cell editor for each and every column. So inside this item aggregation I am creating a template of column list item, and this column list item has the aggregation called cells, within which I am going to specify the list of cells. So I'm once again going to specify all the cells as the text element. Now this column list item is a template that would be repeated for each and every row of your table control. So now for this text element, the data that has to come from the binding. So I'll just leave it blank for now, and we will go ahead and create a model to consume the service. So in the controller file on init function, I'm going to construct a service that will retrieve this, that will retrieve the data from the DB based upon the model. So I'm just copying the service URL, and I'm creating a variable called just URL, and to which I am passing this service URL. So I have passed a service URL over here, and based upon service URL I'm going to construct a model. So variable o model is equal to new sap dot ui dot model dot odata model, and to which I am passing this service URL parameter. Then I am just attaching this model to the view. This dot get view of set model o model, comma, I am specifying it with the name products. So now if I execute my application, so this is going to give me an error saying that this request cannot be load. So 501 not implemented error would occur. So that is basically because of the cross origin policy. Now this service URL, it's located in services.odata.org website, and the request that I'm making is from the website local host. So since we are requesting from one host to another host, there are some security measures which prevent this from happening. So typically when you are going to deploy your application in SAP UI5, after deploying the application, the host of your UI5 application as well as the host of the service URL would be the same. So there you won't be facing any problem. But meanwhile, while you're creating your application locally and if you wanted to test it, then you will get this cross origin error, which you can resolve by opening your Chrome browser by disabling the web security. So to open the Chrome by disabling the web security, you just have to use this command chrome.exe hyphen hyphen disable web security. So when you open with this, your Chrome will be opened in a open by disabling the web security, and you will not have this error, right? So for here I'm just going to add some proxy URL so that I can bypass this, and this server was the OData service was configured to bypass the proxy, which is why we can access it this way by adding this proxy colon HTTP. But if you're going to apply this to your gateway service, this will not work. So for gateway service, you just have to open the Chrome by disabling the web security. And other thing is, now in this service URL we are going to get the information from the product entity. So I'm just going to specify to the table that the entity that it should look for is the product entity. So I'm creating a binding relationship. Products is the name that I have given for the product, and in the root I have an entity set called products from which I wanted to retrieve the information. So now if I go ahead and execute my application, now I have got another error saying that the maximum data service version is 2.0, which is low for the response. So in this case, when we choose the service, we chose the version 3.0. In SAP, we only support the NetWeaver gateway only support OData version 2.0. So the model by default assume the maximum data service version and the data service version to 2.0. So when you're going to consume a gateway service from SAP, you don't have to be worried about this part, because since gateway service support 2.0 and the model also by default point to 2.0, you will not get this error. But whereas the service that we have requested now, it's going to uh, this is going to be service version 3.0. So now that I have constructed this model with the name products, I'm just getting this model information back. And if you see this in the model, you will have a request headers, that is O headers object, in which the maximum service version and the data service version is set to 2.0. So I'm just going to change this parameter to 3.0 to support to this particular service, but this step is not needed when you are consuming your gateway service. So O model dot O headers dot data service version is equal to 3.0. So I'm just changing the header parameter here, and max data service version to be 3.0. So now if I go ahead and execute my application, sorry, cannot set property. Okay, oh headers, just a typing mistake here. So now you can see that the service URL has been loaded successfully. We don't have any errors, and 10 rows of information has been created as a part of this table control, because we have binded the aggregation to the product aggregation to the items, so that how many number of products that are being retrieved, that many times the table would loop and it would create this template element over and over again. Now to display the information, I'm just going to bind the control with the respective attributes. So I'm performing a binding relationship called products, and in that we wanted to be able to perform binding with the ID attribute. So I'm just performing a relative binding here, as my item aggregation is already looking inside the product entity. Sorry. Now if I go ahead and execute this application, so you can see that the information has been displayed in the form of a table control. So in the network section, you can actually see that whenever you are going to construct a model, at that point of execution, if you place a breakpoint in the debugger, you can see this, the model metadata will be loaded when you are constructing the model, but at that point of time the data would not be loaded into your system. So when the table control is being rendered, at that point of time it will actually make the call to products service set. So you can see that it has made a call to the product entity set with $skip is equal to 0 and top is equal to 11. That is because the table control, it has this growing factor set by growing threshold set by default as 20, which means that from the OData service, when you load the initial 20 records. So since there are no 20 records here, it has been limited to dollar skip is equal to 0 and top is equal to 11. So how the system is able to know how many records are there in the service? Because it also performs the query operation for count, which will tell how many number of records are there in this particular server. And here you can also see that the data service version has been changed to 3.0. So that is in our request headers. So this explains the get operation in your service. So it's just constructing the model and that is going to perform your get operations. So in the next exercise I would be covering you the post operation. So thank you.